I've heard it reported it's $4 million a house.
That'd be pretty good, wouldn't it? Would you move for $4 million?
Well, it's not my decision to make, but what do your neighbors think?
I think we're having those discussions.
Now, $4 million, right? That number itself doesn't tell us whether it's actually a good deal. You have to think about everything that comes with moving: your kids' schools, your commute, your neighbors, your memories, your church, your routines, right? Those things don't have price tags on them, right? On the flip side, if your neighborhood is increasingly surrounded by industrial infrastructure, right? Noise, construction traffic, transmission lines, substations, eventually you have to ask yourself, would you rather fight the inevitable or negotiate the best possible outcome? All right, so here's what's happening. A neighborhood in Virginia, right in the middle of what's become arguably the most important digital infrastructure market on earth, is being approached to collectively sell their entire subdivision. Why? Because developers want the land for another massive data center campus. According to the report that we're going to be talking about today, 143 homeowners would all have to agree. Now, one homeowner who's also a developer says selling is probably the best option, and it's being reported that they're being offered close to $4 million per property. And so let's check this out, because I think this is an interesting story as data centers continue to be the talk of the town.
We designed the backyard to have fun in.
Mitchell Gandhi's Ashburn home is an oasis for his family.
Did the basketball court, did this deck, did the fire pit.
You see that place?
Or was an oasis.
Data centers are there and there.
When Gandhi bought this house in the Regency subdivision in 2013, he had no idea what was coming.
Here we are 13 years later, and we are the epicenter of the internet.
Sometimes in Loudoun County, it feels like data centers are everywhere, but if you live in the Regency, they are literally right across the street.
Man, do you see that backyard? Wow. Like deck, pool, basketball court. This is what people strive for when it comes to property ownership. And this homeowner has pretty much everything you can ask for when it comes to the type of property that people see themselves in a dream world, right? You got everything in your backyard. But the interesting thing about this is how, when it comes to the neighborhood that we live in, highest and best use can change over time. When this homeowner bought this property in 2013, he wasn't buying next to a data center district. He was buying what he believed was a suburban neighborhood. But cities aren't static. Neighborhoods evolve, infrastructure evolves, industries evolve. And sometimes those changes create enormous wealth, while other times they create enormous conflict. As developers, we constantly ask ourselves a simple question: what will this neighborhood look like in 10 or 20 years? Not what does it look like today. I'm located in Detroit, and Detroit is full of examples where neighborhoods have completely changed over the last century. Areas that were once industrial are now becoming mixed-use districts, right? Former warehouses are now apartments. Old factories have become office space or entertainment venues. Land rarely stays frozen in time.
I could use all my energy to keep fighting, but in reality, these concrete buildings aren't going anywhere.
Now, a lot of people have heard that Northern Virginia has a lot of data centers, right? It's not a secret, but I don't think people realize how important this place actually is. It's estimated that a significant share of the world's internet traffic passes through Northern Virginia because of its concentration of internet exchange points, fiber infrastructure, cloud computing facilities, right? This is not an accident. Infrastructure attracts infrastructure. It's the same reason Detroit became the center of automobile manufacturing. Once suppliers, skilled trades, transportation networks, financing and supporting industries all cluster together, it becomes incredibly difficult for competitors to catch up. Now, today, the same clustering effect is happening with AI and cloud computing, as we see here in Virginia. The cloud isn't floating somewhere in the sky. It's not in space, right? Maybe one day it will be, but it's sitting inside enormous buildings filled with servers that consume staggering amounts of electricity right in our communities.
So Gandhi, a real estate developer and former HOA president, brokered a deal for himself and his neighbors to get out by selling out collectively, all 143 homeowners in the Regency, to a company planning to bulldoze everything to make way for what else? A massive new data center development. on their land.
Now, this is where the story becomes less about technology and more about land economics. These developers aren't buying these houses because they like them. They're buying these properties in this neighborhood as a whole because the land underneath those houses have become more valuable for a different use. That's actually a concept in real estate called highest and best use. That's simply the legally permissible, physically possible, financially feasible, and most profitable use of a property. Years ago, these homes represented the highest and best use, right? These are beautiful, beautiful properties, and they don't look like they need a lot of work at all, right? But today, the market may be saying something different. That's difficult emotionally, right? When we're talking about a housing shortage and where people are raising their family, this is something that people aren't comfortable having conversations about, right? It seems very, very aggressive and emotionless from the sector that a lot of people aren't a fan of now. But economically, it's how cities have evolved for centuries.
Unfortunately, we're under NDA, so I can't tell you all the terms.
I've heard it reported it's $4 million a house.
That'd be pretty good, wouldn't it? Would you move for $4 million?
Well, it's not my decision to make, but what do your neighbors think?
I think we're having those discussions.
Now, $4 million, right? That number itself doesn't tell us whether it's actually a good deal. You have to think about everything that comes with moving: your kids' schools, your commute, your neighbors, your memories, your church, your routines, right? Those things don't have price tags on them, right? On the flip side, if your neighborhood is increasingly surrounded by industrial infrastructure, right? Noise, construction traffic, transmission lines, substations, eventually you have to ask yourself, would you rather fight the inevitable or negotiate the best possible outcome?
But here's the thing. All 143 homeowners have to agree to sell for the deal to go through. And so far, that hasn't happened.
Now, this is one of the hardest things developers ever attempt. It's called land assembly. Imagine trying to build $1 billion project, but first you need permission from 143 different families. Every family has different financial situations, different emotional attachments, different retirement plans, different opinions, right? One owner can stop an entire project. People often assume developers simply buy land. Well, sometimes, right? But buying the land is actually harder than building the project.
This isn't the only Northern Virginia neighborhood feeling squeezed, searching for an exit strategy. More than 200 landowners in Prince William County are trying to sell too, to a proposed data center campus known as the Dulles South Innovation Center. At nearly 2,000 acres, it would be the largest data center development in Prince William County history.
Now, let's zoom out a little bit, right? This isn't just about one neighborhood. This tells us something much, much bigger. Demand for AI infrastructure is not slowing down one bit. It's accelerating. Every ChatGPT conversation, every streamed movie, every Google search, every online purchase requires physical infrastructure somewhere. AI may feel digital, but AI is one of the most physical industries we've seen in decades. These buildings require enormous amounts of land, electricity, water, fiber, cooling systems, substations, transmission upgrades. This isn't software anymore. This is infrastructure.
Earlier this month, the county's Board of Supervisors unanimously rejected the plan. Still, the developers say they aren't walking away.
Now, this is where politics enters the conversation. Rejecting a project doesn't eliminate demand. It simply pushes investment somewhere else. Cities compete for investment. Developers compete for land. State competes for tax revenue. If one community says no, another community says yes, right? That's why zoning decisions are so powerful. They're not simply deciding what gets built. They're deciding what kind of economy they want in the future.
It almost sounds like if you can't beat them, join them.
It sounds like that, but in reality, what it is the best option.
Mittal Gandhi says he's still trying to convince the remaining holdouts in his subdivision to sell.
Whether they take it or not is up to them.
The choice to cash in and move on, the only answer he believes makes sense.
Now, I know that some viewers may not necessarily be happy with me saying this, but I actually understand this perspective. But I also understand why some neighbors would never agree, right? That's what makes development so complicated. There's rarely a perfect scenario, only trade-offs, right? Developers think about returns, residents think about quality of life, cities think about tax revenue. Everyone is looking at the same land, but everyone sees something completely different. For more than a century, cities competed to attract factories, railroads, ports, and manufacturing plants, right? Today, they're competing for digital infrastructure. The industrial economy built steel mills and auto plants. The digital economy, however, is building data centers. The question every city should be asking is, how do we capture the economic benefits of these projects while protecting the communities that already exist? As somebody who develops housing, I also think there's another lesson here. We often frame housing and economic development as competing priorities, but they're deeply connected. When billions of dollars of investment flow into an area, they can drive up land values, create new jobs, increase demand for housing, and put pressure on existing neighborhoods. That means cities need to think proactively about housing production, infrastructure upgrades, and long-term planning, not after the investment arrives, but before it does. And finally, this story reminds us of something every developer eventually learns. Real estate isn't really about buildings, it's about land. Buildings can be renovated, buildings can be demolished, buildings can be replaced, but land and what society decides it should become is ultimately what shapes the future of our cities. Thanks for listening to me ramble. I'll see you in the next video.